what advice would you give them about where wellness is?
I can't imagine that in 15 years we'll be sitting here talking about the same format of healthcare. So I think if you're thinking about innovating or doing something in healthcare, I think technology is the place to be.
Welcome back to the Primal Reset Podcast. Today, we're joined by Dr. Dan Petashnick, a retired ophthalmologist, a medical advisor, and a healthcare innovator. With over 2 decades in eye care and a pioneering role in at-home vision testing through EyeQue, Dr. Petashnick has helped reshape how we think about accessibility and preventative eye health. Dr. Petashnick, it is a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Elliot. Thanks for the invitation. Really happy to be here.
So share with me a little bit about your background. Give me a quick 60-second intro about yourself.
Sure. I am a now retired ophthalmologist. I retired at the end of 2024 in December. Prior to that, I had practiced for almost 30 years. I was a general ophthalmologist as well as a cornea specialist, doing in general eye care as well as pretty much any surgical procedure in the front of the eye. So a lot of experience with both refractions and refractive surgery and all that kind of stuff, anything in between.
What kind of got you from going to being an ophthalmologist and starting to develop more of an at-home care for eye health?
Personally, I've always had sort of an entrepreneurial spirit. I've really tried to do a couple of different innovative things, both in eye care and not in eye care. And the technology for refraction really had reached a point where you could easily see where it could become fully automated. So I had begun working on my own solution for an automated refraction device. And as part of our final procedure before going ahead with development and building our device, which we called iPod, that was my business partner's clever idea. We did a final search of technologies that may be comparable, and we found EyeQue. And that was the day that my iPod died. And I reached out to EyeQue because they have a much more low-cost, innovative technology. They were kind enough to offer me a medical advisor position. I think the second thing is that it's also clear to see that in eye care is still, like most of healthcare, is based on in-office examinations. And modern life is such that people are very busy, don't have flexibility. An in-office exam requires, generally speaking, a minimum of 2 to 4 hours, between travel and spending time in the office. And it's also costly. Running an office is not cheap. So certainly, it's not hard to see that with new technologies, and particularly after COVID, when telehealth really became useful and used and more common for people to engage in, it was not hard to see that the movement in the future will be towards more remote diagnostics and telehealth healthcare. So these were sort of my journeys to EyeQue, and I've really loved working with EyeQue since I found them about 7 years ago.
What's a belief that you had 30 years ago starting in your career as an ophthalmologist that you don't believe and you disagree with now?
Well, I think that for me, I was a philosophy major in undergraduate, and one of my applications to medical school, the University of Wisconsin, where I ended up going, was about the objective good or the philosophical good that is offered in providing healthcare to people. I mean, you can argue about what's valuable in our lives, but I think that objectively, most people would agree that helping other people's health and improving their quality of life is an objective good. And that really is what brought me into medicine. And I really believe that, actually, certainly at the beginning of my career. There's no question that there's always been an element of business in medicine. Running a practice is essentially a small business. But I think early on, the reimbursement models and just the way doctors were treated really demonstrated a greater value towards quality care and the work that was being done. I think over the last, almost 30 years, I think that model has really changed. And in my view, it's been kind of unfortunate in that, I am very fortunate. I don't want to sound sour grapes. I've had a great career. I've been able to retire at 61. And I feel very, very fortunate and blessed with the career that I've had. Having said that, I do, in my experience, feel that medicine has shifted to really a business entity and with a focus really on enriching corporate entities like insurance companies, medical device companies, and pharmaceutical companies. And along with that, the way you make money is you charge and you try to spend less of that. So there really is a limiting feature to access to care. So I think those are the things that really have changed for me in terms of my perspective about healthcare in this country, that I think it once was quite valued. And today, based on certainly the model that's being practiced now, much less so. I think patients still appreciate excellent care in the time that you give them, but I think the system overall is not designed that way any longer, which is unfortunate.
What breakthroughs do you hope the next generation of vision innovators will chase down?
Well, I think there's a couple of components to that question. I think with my experience in IQ, I, I think it's very important how you approach trying to change healthcare. I think I've seen with my work in IQ that the idea of coming to this large, cumbersome healthcare system that has very large businesses with stake in the current healthcare model and coming in and sort of brandishing a disrupting technology doesn't work very well, because I think there are a lot of people who then will work to see you not succeed with your endeavor, whether it makes sense or not. So I think that trying to work with the system to change the system is really the way to go about it. And as an example of that, I recently had the good fortune of meeting with business representative from Walmart in Walmart Health, who was one of the people involved in transforming hearing from a prescription device requiring an audiologist to an over-the-counter device. And that was sort of his message, that when they went to pitch the idea of making that transition, they said, look, for a lot of people, the current system is just fine. We're not trying to destroy what's there, but you also have to recognize here's the data demonstrating that there's really a healthcare crisis in this country in hearing, that there are literally millions of people who cannot hear well because they don't have access to hearing aids because of the cost. The cost of a hearing aid was somewhere between $4,000 and $6,000. And that's a ballpark, but that's a reasonable ballpark. And they pitched the idea that we simply want to make hearing aids cheaper. The technology is there. We don't require an audiologist. A prescription is no longer required. So that, let's make it cheaper. And then the stakeholders in government really bought into that argument, and hearing aids went from $4,000 to $6,000 down to $100 to $200. And literally you solve a problem that's helped millions of people in this country, literally. So that's the first issue. I think you really have to work within the system to try to change the system and be respectful of that. Any young entrepreneurs who are thinking about trying to do something in healthcare, I think that's one important message. There are a lot of incredible technologies out there now that with COVID, even before COVID, EyeQue had started working on remote diagnostic devices for healthcare, and they have devices for vision, contrast, color, and refraction technologies, for technologies to determine, how to design glasses. And there are other companies in this space now too, developing all kinds of novel technologies. A lot of them are smartphone-based technologies, and there are others that are screen-based online things. But a lot of optics requires some addition to your smartphone. You're doing this blog. I'm sure, you've talked a lot about technology and the rapid advances of technology, particularly now with AI. So technology is going to boom, and it's going to move quickly. And what's going to be available in the marketplace for remote diagnostics and eye care and other healthcare specialties is going to be amazing in the not too distant future. So I think companies like EyeQue and others, really offer the future for eye care. Thinking about one specific technology in preparing for this blog, I think, if you were to ask me what's one technology that you think might really make a change in the near future, I would say smart glasses. I believe both Meta and EssilorLuxottica are working with different devices, and it's not hard to envision placing diagnostic devices right into those smart glasses for refraction, for diagnostic issues, even for fundus photography. So looking at the back of the eye. So I think that's an interesting technology, and EyeQue is looking at that as well for future development.
So speaking of that, what is staring at a screen every single day, or utilizing these smart glasses going to affect our eye health?
There are a couple components to that question as well. There is a lot of data about the increasing, people are calling it actually even an epidemic of myopia or nearsightedness. There's a lot of data that because you're staring at a screen close, nature's adaptation to close work is to develop nearsightedness. As you'd expect, you're doing a lot of near work. The body is designed to compensate for that naturally. So one of the changes that is occurring is that there's a lot more nearsighted development happening in the world. There's some data that by 2050, 50% of the world will have some level of nearsightedness. The nearsightedness is also brought on in younger people because since they're spending so much more time on their devices, their iPads, their smartphones, etc., they're not going outside. And sun is a natural way of reducing the development of nearsightedness. In terms of blue light and those sort of questions, there are a lot of advocates for blue light blocking glasses. My understanding is that there's not a lot of peer-reviewed literature that supports those glasses. But when people ask me about that, I say, look, if you have issues with glare, try to work with your screen, change the screen. And if you feel like the blue light glasses are helpful, then by all means, use them. I think there is also a lot of data that, staying off your devices before bed because the blue light can affect your circadian rhythm is something that's been demonstrated.
And you stole the question right from me. I was going to ask you, I'm wearing my blue light glasses right now. And for me personally, I don't know the data behind it. I've seen all of the Instagram reels and all the social media kind of behind it and what people have said. For me, staring at a screen, and I was in a corporate environment before, in an office every single day, kind of staring at a screen, it was giving me headaches. And I'm sure there's a lot of different factors along with it. But since I've started wearing these blue light glasses, whether it's my mindset or the glasses actually working, I feel like I have a less chance or my head's not throbbing towards the end of the day after 8, 10 hours of me staring at a screen every single day.
I think subjective remedies, the things that work for you are really important. Might not feel good when you're spending time on looking at a screen, by all
Yeah,
means.
absolutely. The personalization is something that everyone needs to take in consideration. Everything we say here is not generalized. We're very personalized in ourselves, and every body is different. Someone could stare at a screen forever and not develop myopia. Maybe. I don't know if that's the small chance or a big chance of that happening, but regardless, everyone's different. To
100%.
the point, you mentioned about the sun. I asked this on my last podcast with Noam, actually, who's also part of EyeQue. But sunglasses, wearing them outside, is that, on your opinion, or if you know any data behind it, is that something that we should start practicing a little bit more to help reverse the myopia?
It's an interesting thing. I think that early early childhood, I think most people, even though there are issues with sun exposure to the eyes, later development of particularly cataracts or even macular degeneration. But I think a lot of people would say that in children or young people, sun exposure, I mean, of course, we're not talking about looking right at the sun, but some sun exposure is really helpful in preventing myopic or nearsighted development. So, letting kids play outside and those sort of things without sunglasses. Now, obviously, if you're on a fishing boat and you're looking at the sun off the water, yeah, I think you ought to be wearing sunglasses or skiing on the snow and so forth and so on in environments of really heavy ultraviolet light exposure. And I think later in life, probably from teenage years on, it's probably useful to wear sunglasses because of the general health issues related to sun exposure on the eye. So early in life, probably not as much, except in certain circumstances. Later in life, absolutely a health benefit for people.
All right. That's answers my question, makes me feel better about trying not to wear sunglasses outside. I mean, being in the Florida sun, obviously it's difficult to, but I try my best to not wear sunglasses. And I think I've done it for
Definitely
almost a
honestly.
year now, actually.
Yeah, no, definitely wear your sunglasses.
All right, perfect. Kind of going into what we spoke about earlier with the next generation of innovators, if you could sit down with a med student or a health tech founder in the next decade or 2 decades from now, what advice would you give them about where wellness is?
Well, in terms of where healthcare will be going, I really do believe that. I believe in technology. I think that our current healthcare system, whether it be eye care again or any delivery of healthcare, is going to be completely different. So if you ask me now what 2040 will look like, I think it will be all driven by technology. I do. I mean, again, I don't think that our current system, to me makes a lot of sense, particularly with technological innovation. So I can't imagine that in 15 years we'll be sitting here talking about the same format of healthcare. So I think if you're thinking about innovating or doing something in healthcare, I think technology is the place to be. I think health and wellness, though, I think that speaks to a broader question. And I think that goes back to my medical school training. Back in the late 80s, I was medical school at the University of Wisconsin, and they really emphasized that healthcare, providing care to a patient, you see the patient as the whole person, not as the illness or the limb or the ache that brought them into the office. I was fortunate to have excellent mentors back then, and I think that's really an important message. And I think when you find good practitioners in any specialty, you find people who really have that vision and look to the whole person, really what's going on with their health issues. And I think wellness, is going to be defined by that. It's not just by being absent of aches and pains or illness, God forbid, but what is going to make one's life satisfying? And that's a complicated question. I mean, there's thousands of years of philosophy looking at that, but I think that it'll be technology, and it will be also about the whole human being, the whole person experience, not just an individual ache or pain or something bothering you.
I would strongly agree with seeing that as a future forecast. And we've started to already see it now, more of a personalization of the whole body as opposed to one particular aspect of it. I have a curious question with colorblind. And I've seen these glasses that supposedly cure colorblind people to be able to see the colors that they haven't been able to see. And I understand that there's different kinds, but I'm curious on your opinion. What's the story behind that? What's your thoughts with colorblind glasses?
I don't have a lot of experience with colorblind glasses, but I can share with you a few things. There's congenital colorblindness and acquired colorblindness. So if you are later in life and you know all the color spectrum is quote unquote normally, and then you start for a variety of reasons losing your color vision, you will notice a color vision deficit because something's changing. For people who have congenital or born with color blindness, they do see colors, all colors of the spectrum, but they see them differently. So I believe that color blindness glasses depend on your spectrum of color blindness, and there are filters that can be inserted to further enhance the deficit in some of the color forms that you're not seeing. So I think they do work, and I think people do speak of them. But again, I don't really have a lot of experience in working with colorblind glasses.
Okay, my follow-up question would have been, I've heard that the color purple doesn't quite exist, and it's something that our imagination and our figments actually create. Wondering what your take is on it.
To be honest, I'd have to review that. I know that within color perception, there are primary colors that we perceive, but I also do know that we perceive combinations of colors. So I don't know specifically about purple. Again, I'm sorry I
Okay.
couldn't answer that specifically.
No, curious question. I was just thinking about it. I like the color purple. I've seen it I mean, my can's purple. So, was curious to see if that's something that was true that I've seen on social media or if it was just another hoax or a belief of someone else.
I mean, there's certainly a lot of cognitive filtering for all of our experience, but I don't know about specifically the color purple.
All right. Well, if we can go to the last question, as you step into this new chapter in your life, how are you redefining your purpose beyond business?
You know, I- it's a really excellent question. And for me personally, I spent a lot of time before I retired talking to retired people. If you practice ophthalmology, you're seeing, that age group quite a bit. And there were all kinds of pieces of advice that I received about how to transition and what you should do. And for me, thankfully, I really enjoyed two major aspects. One is time. I think that we always talk about the value of time, but getting off sort of a really fast paced life and a stressful life and settling down, I think the value of time has just been reemphasized to me. And I'm really enjoying using time in a way that I find to be satisfying. And I have thankfully a lot of interests. I also have to say that working with EyeQue has probably been one of the most exciting features of my career. Working with a really talented, smart group of entrepreneurial people to try to offer a solution for quality eye care, low cost eye care outside of a lot of the difficulties that we have in our current healthcare system is really, really interesting to me. For anybody, I know whether you went from corporate to blogs, I mean, that when you enter into any new universe of knowledge, you can just learn so much and there's so much different perspective and you meet really fascinating people like the one story that I shared about the hearing aids. I mean, it was just so fascinating to listen to this very talented person speak about an approach that's not really self-evident. That wasn't self-evident, at least to me. I think all of those components of the experience of working with EyeQue has been fabulous. And I hope to keep doing that even in retirement. I'm very excited about the work that we're doing and the people that I'm working with. So it's been really a great experience for me.
Well, you're learning every day. I'm learning every day. And hopefully everyone watching this is learning a little bit more from you. So you've definitely shared a lot of your knowledge today. I will have the EyeQue.com website in the description below. If anyone is looking for any at-home eye care, go check them out. They're doing some great stuff. They're coming out with more stuff every single day, it seems like. So go check them out. But Dan, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Thank
Thanks,
you so
Elliot.
much
It's
for
been
your
great
time.
talking with you. And thank you for the really thoughtful questions.